Let's go. And live from the basement of the WCPT studios, I'm your host, Mike Mercado, joined with Paul Chivari, and here right now, Devin Tingle. Later on in the show, Dan Marver. It's a jam-packed edition of the Sports Cubicle, a Thanksgiving weekend edition of the Sports Cubicle, and you know it is a crazy day in this show when I am here to open up a segment, to open up the show. The Chicago Bears lose on Thanksgiving 20-23 to the Detroit Lions in stunning fashion once again. And that in itself can be a lead story. That in itself might be the lead story if 24 hours later, head coach Matt Eberflus became the first ever head coach for the Chicago Bears to be fired during the season. It then broke that interim head coach will be offensive coordinator Thomas Brown, who is now getting his addition to be the head coach moving forward. And before I throw it to Devin on what he thought about the game and more importantly, the move that the Bears have done organizationally to move on from Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus was 14-32 in 2+ seasons as the Bears head coach, including a 5-17 record in one-score games. Now, I have never been one to advocate for somebody to lose their job. In today's day and age, in today's world, even if it's a high-profile, high-paying job, you don't look for somebody to lose their job. At least that's not the way I like to live things. I don't like to see players get cut. I don't like to see coaches get fired. But if you're not doing your job, if you're not performing as a player or as a coach in a cutthroat business where money matters, you have to make a move. And the Chicago Bears were finally put as an organization in a position as ownership. They had to make a move. 6 straight losses, different ways of losing, different heartbreak, different levels of frustration have gotten us to this point where we thought they would never do this and their hands were forced. So, Devin, a devastating loss, a frustrating loss, a lot of good in that game from Caleb Williams in the second half, a lot of weirdness from all around a bad team that plays bad at points. But bigger picture, Matt Eberflus is gone. Your initial thoughts when you heard the news?
It was a very mixed bag of emotions there, Mercado, because I didn't know if I wanted to go na 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 hey 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 goodbye, or if I want to say kick rocks, never come back. You're not a White Sox fan, Mercado. You don't know what it's like when you want a coach gone as soon as yesterday. And it was one of those things I was very much shocked here because the Bears are, as far as I know, they're the oldest franchise in the NFL. And this is the first time since what, 1926 that they fired a coach mid-season?
So Adam Schefter's exact tweet to your point. Black Friday, for the first time in 100+ year history of the franchise, the Chicago Bears have made an in-season head coaching change, firing Matt Eberflus.
And that's just crazy to me because we could probably name countless other teams that have fired their coach mid-season here. I think it's better they fired him on the road. I hope they made him take an Uber back home, but let's be real here. It's just one of those things where it's like we've been calling for this since pretty much last year, Mercado. It kind of made sense with everyone knew they were going to draft Caleb Williams. That would have been the perfect time to find a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, a whole new system altogether here. And it's one of those things where it's great. This guy finally, is getting what he deserves. He's been managing. I almost swore. How do I will say PP poor is how his management has been lately. And just seeing him finally get out there. But this is the problem, though, because we've been seeing this with the Bears, where as they will go and draft a quarterback in the first round, they'll fire their head coach the first year afterwards. Then they'll make this kid have to learn a whole new playbook with a new coach. And then when the quarterback doesn't work out, it's like, oh, Bears can't say quarterbacks. Oh, Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, Rex Grossman, they're all bust. And it's like, are these guys bust or are we just not doing the job here? So, yes, Matt Eberflus needed to go as soon as I'd say 4 weeks ago here. I'm just more surprised it happened because the Bears don't do things to shake us up ever. We all thought for sure he was going to go to the end of the season. But looking at now, Mercado, the chances of the Bears making the playoffs are slim to none here. I mean, if you got a lot of money and you're a gambling man, throw your money on them because if they win, you're going to win big. But I do not see it happening. So it's kind of one of those things where it's just like when the White Sox fired Pedro Grifol. It's like, oh, great, it needed to happen. But why now? Why not 20 years ago? Oops, that's a Simpson quote I'd love to throw in. Why not 4 weeks ago? Why not last year? And it seems like at the point where it's like they're just doing this now to keep the fans happy here. And it's making me happy, but it's kind of at the point where now the season's over here. And in our reality, it might have made sense to keep Matt Eberflus and keep losing to get, another top 10 draft pick for the what, fifth year in a row now?
So let's take that. Let's explore a little bit of whether or not they should have kept them, what it means, and draft position. Because right now, I think they're in the ninth position in the NFL draft if the season was 10 today. I think more importantly than anything, this was a move to give a chance to Thomas Brown to really audition for the job because you know you're going to interview everybody. More importantly, you're going to interview somebody like Ben Johnson. So if you allow Thomas Brown to put film onto tape as a head coach, and it lets you have a better idea of what might happen. This is my big issue really fast on how the Bears handled specifically today. We knew after that game in Detroit that Matt Eberflus was done. We've known Matt Eberflus has been cooked, not just because of how the games ended, but how he responded in press conferences, how he spoke. And in the most important times, we have seen, even in regression from certain plays from Caleb, we have seen enough progression to understand that this is the guy you got to kind of put your eggs in. And Matt Eberflus was given opportunity this season when we all knew that this was inevitable, when we all knew the Bears were going to end up with a number one pick and we're going to draft a quarterback, that they were putting him with a lame duck coach. But these decisions go bigger than just being a defensive-minded coach. There are plenty defensive-minded coaches that have taken quarterbacks and have been good, and things have worked prosperously in their team. This was a guy who didn't know how to time manage, didn't know how to throw a challenge. This was mistakes that head coaches aren't supposed to make. And Marver is actually just joining us. That's what you know is a big deal where Marver is joining on the call because, once again, if you're just joining us here on the Sports Cubicle, Matt Eberflus has been fired from the Chicago Bears, the first head coach in Bears history in over 100 years to be fired in season. Matt Eberflus was 14-32 in 2+ seasons as the Bears coach, including a 5-17 record in one-score games, 6-game losing streak, found a lot of ways to lose, including things that he put his team in that position. Marver, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. You saw the news. We are not really focusing on the game itself. There was a lot of good, a lot of bad. The Bears just aren't better than Detroit. We could break that down a little bit, but the big news is they made a move, and Kevin Warren is the X factor here, where Kevin Warren has never been a Kevin Warren for the Bears organization. The McCaskies have never had somebody like that to help them guide them through a coaching firing midseason. Your thoughts when the news broke from Adam Schefter, from Tom Pelissero, from Ian Rappaport, that they decided to finally move on from Matt Eberflus?
Well, I thought it's kind of hard to be the captain of the Titanic, was my first reaction, because I've been equating this to the Titanic because you know how it's going to end every game, pretty much. There's a lot of good stuff that happens in the middle, and then they hit the iceberg, and, and actually, ironically, the explanation he gave, he said he took full responsibility, and it was third down, and I get it. They couldn't have kicked a field goal from that position. It was just that the whole thing took darn too much time, and some of that's on Caleb too, I'd say.
By the way, Marvin,
So,
can I interject to that really fast? I'm glad you brought that up so we could set this up, and then I want you to continue.
Okay.
I think this is a perfect example where Caleb Williams was at fault in that last play. And I think people have to be honest. It's okay, though. That's your rookie quarterback. He did a lot of good stuff to get you in that position, took a bad sack, but you almost have to take it because of the good comes with the bad and that progression. The only thing that really falls on Matt Eberflus in that position, right, in my opinion, you have to bail out your 22-year-old. You're the third-year head coach fighting for your job. You have to do something. And people are right. Like, depending on when he called that timeout, you might not have been able to go for the field goal or go for that extra play. But that's why good coaches understand the nuance in a game, in a given moment. So, Marver, please continue, because I think that's a great point.
I was just going to say, then on the third down play, if you take the time out there and you don't make a first down, I you don't have much confidence in your field goal team to begin with, but they'd be scrambling out there in like 12 or less seconds, and I don't know if they'd be capable of doing that. So that was the issue, and I think that was in his head. It's just that his head didn't realize that there wasn't time to do what he wanted to do. And I guess there was supposed to be a quarterback draw on the play in which Williams was sacked, and that would have been nice if that had, gone through and they get a first. If they get a first down, then they just spike the ball. That's a whole different story. And they were in field goal range before all that. They were down, what, to the 25? So it's just a shame, like every other game, which is a rhyme. Game is a shame. And just starting with the Fail Mary and, blocked and the whole thing.
So does
So
that fall on Eberflus in your opinion? I mean, I know it's a combined
yeah,
effort, right? But like
right,
now
right,
that we're
right.
here.
Right. The captain of the ship is responsible, no question about it. And there's no doubt that he probably deserved to be fired. And the way things are standing, I mean, it's going to be the same players. It's going to be Ms. Brown's going to be in charge, and the way it stands now, I thought it was quite likely they could end up 4-13. With the three other divisional games plus Frisco and Seattle, 5 games left at 4-8. So I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. So we're building for next year. So maybe this is the right thing to do because we're going to get a new coach next year anyway. So it really didn't matter, in my opinion, if he was fired now or after the Packers game in January, but he was going to go, and this sealed his fate because the whole world looked at this as largely his fault, which is largely true in my opinion. But it was just a weird situation to have. If you look at it, 32 seconds, why couldn't they do something? Well, you have to analyze it more deeply because of the fact it was third down and they were out of field goal range. So I don't know. It's unfortunate. The way things have been going, they should probably kicked it when they got down to the 25. But hindsight is 2020 when you're the captain of the Titanic.
It's Marver, to your point, right? Like there's too many weird instances with this team. One time is one thing, right? Like if the Hail Mary was the only thing, or the block field goal to Green Bay, or when it's fourth and 3 and Caleb is rushing to get the play in and they throw it 2 yards behind the line and the game's over. There's too many moments where things just get weird. But I do want to point this out, right? Like again, Matt Eberflus is going to wear this. Matt Eberflus just lost his job. And again, it's very gutless, in my opinion, for the McCaskey family to knowingly let that man go out and take questions and arrows from the best beat reporting team in the National Football League, that is the Chicago Bears coverage, knowing he was going to get fired an hour after that. That is such a brain dead thing the Bears did that ripples around the NFL. Agents remember that. Coaches remember that. Front office people remember that. And I want to bring this out. Shout out to Mark Potash for tweeting this out. It starts at top. Since George McCaskey became the Bears chairman in 2011, the Bears have fired 3 GMs, 5 head coaches, 3 OCs in 14 seasons. They have 2 winning seasons, 2 playoff berths, 0 playoff wins, and a 93 and 130 record. That's a winning percentage of 0.417 to show for it. So we can blame Matt Nagy, Eberflus, Tressman. You can blame John Fox. You could blame Trubisky, Justin, now Caleb. The one common denominator has been an ownership that I don't think is malicious, just isn't very bright when it comes to running a football organization. And we're going to talk about in a little bit the stadium and how that whole debacle has happened. But we notice when Kevin Warren comes in, and I think most of us agree, even Ryan Poles has made some mistakes, and I think he is very culpable for how bad the O-line and D-line were this season. That's a smart GM. That's a good GM. Maybe not the best GM, but definitely a good GM. To see football people maybe trying to guide the McCaskies to the right path might be what this organization has always needed, is outside voices. But I've always maintained this. Caleb Williams needs to be Bears proof. Just like Josh Allen was Buffalo Bills proof, just like Joe Burrow is Cincinnati Bengals proof, Caleb Williams has to be bigger than the Bears incompetent. And that is something that's a lot to put on a 22-year-old who does some special things out there. But it doesn't change the fact that we knew this day was coming. They knew that day was coming, and they still decided to go down this road and let play out all the way to Thanksgiving Day. They knew how bad Shane Waldron is, and they let that ride as long as they have. And this team also, this ownership, gave Matt Eberflus that 5-year deal. We didn't know the extent of his contract. So part of it, too, is did they want to pay for another head coach while they were going to bring in a new one? And Marver, I want to bring this up because I think it was a great point where you brought up that he deserves most of it. There is something to Matt Eberflus and the Chicago Bears not keeping expectations in check. We had Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus talking about the roster and the depth and that they were ready to go. And that has been a big downfall for this team. So to me, this is all encompassing. And I guess the only good part about this is that Thomas Brown now gets an audition. Devin, do you think if Thomas Brown shows a good performance as the new interim head coach, that he has a legit shot of becoming the permanent head coach of the Chicago Bears?
Absolutely here, because Thomas Brown's not going to be asking for a big fat paycheck. I mean, there's been, rumors going around that you can find this Bears opening on Indeed, for crying out loud here. The Bears don't want to go and pay. Have the Bears ever hired someone who was already a head coach?
Nope.
I really can't. Exactly. I cannot think so. They don't want to spend the money here.
So like John Fox and those kind of guys, when obviously they were past their prime, but This is an organization that loves to hire first-time head coaches.
Exactly. They find a lot of offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, quarterback coaches, guys that they think, oh, it's like, we're going to boost you up here. No, truth be told, they don't want to pony up the dough here. I think all three of us can admit that here. The McCaskies love to act like they're, oh, woe is me. We are the poorest millionaires in the NFL. Boo hoo. But it's just the way they go here is they just keep trying to. I mean, let's be real here. If the Bears did not have the first overall draft pick and they were going to get Caleb Williams, do you think they would not have gone for, Drake May, Jane Daniels, because Justin Fields is on the end of his rookie deal here if he wasn't performing the way they want to? This team does not like to spend money here. So, of course, absolutely, if he performs well, that's the case here. But also looking at, a lot of these guys are getting fired next year or at the end of this year. Who really is out there? If you're going to go for, there's some good options, obviously, but in all reality, we know the Bears here. They're not going to really spend money here. Although I could see the two things. I could see them hiring Mike McCarthy using White Sox logic of, well, when he was with the Packers, he beat us all the time. And there's been rumors that Matt Nagy wants to leave Kansas City. And I could see the Bears being like, you know what? Let's give you a second chance because F the fans.
No, I think you're a little, you had too much turkey this Thanksgiving. I think, in all honesty, it's going to come down to three names. It's going to come down to Joe Brady, Thomas Brown, and Ben Johnson. And it depends on how much money Ben Johnson wants and which quarterback he wants to be the head coach for. I think Thomas Brown, if he is a leader of men and you have guys like Whitworth telling you that they feel he's the offensive Mike Tomlin, there's some weight to when people say that. And Brady, obviously, with everything with Josh Allen. So there is names out there. And obviously the pipe dream of Kyle Shanahan of San Francisco stupid enough to fire him to bring the dump truck full of money and bring that coaching staff over here to Chicago. The Bears are in a good position. And again, to no credit of themselves, maybe a little bit to Ryan Poles, they have a 22-year-old rookie quarterback that might be in the rookie of the year conversation. National media is talking about 300 yards, 3 touchdowns against Brian Flores' defense. It's a little bit easier to sell than like Jacksonville, where you have Trevor Lawrence with a busted shoulder. So the Bears, maybe with a little luck and some due diligence, have put themselves in a position where they can probably get a guy out there. I do think that you can't discount if it's a good or bad thing, though, a first-time head coach. There is a risk to that. Even if Ben Johnson is the guy, right? Like, we've seen him do great stuff in Detroit. You have to be honest with yourself. He will be a first-time head coach. He will be the guy in Chicago. He will be the guy with the big contract. Can he live up to that? It's different from being the OC and then the guy. There's a difference between being Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell's a leader, right? People follow that man through brick walls. Same thing with Mike Tomlin. There is something about being a head coach than just being an offensive guru, right? Sean McVay is a great people person. Kyle Shanahan's a good leader of men. You see what I mean? Like, there's more value than just I can call a good playbook. Ben Johnson still needs to prove that. Thomas Brown, and, I'm willing to give everybody a fair shot, right? Thomas Brown's going to show us that right now. Thomas Brown is going to get a chance, the last 4 or 5 games, to be in that locker room, to talk to the offense and defense. He's a former player. This is a chance. And it kind of breaks the mold a little bit of the Bears, where we will have some film on him as the head coach. We can determine how it was the last few games with him there. And if they do hire him, it won't feel so Bears where they just did a lateral move and just hired their offensive coordinator that became the OC because the OC they hired was garbage. So, there's still a lot of context on how we're going to get to the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. Because if you're just joining us here on the Sports Cubicle, I'm your host, Mike Mercado, Daniel Marver, Devin Tingle, joining us as Matt Eberflus has been let go as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Marver, I mentioned it, none of us ever root for somebody to lose their job. But I think this is a coach that didn't perform. The big thing he was brought in for was his defensive greatness as a mind, putting guys in positions to win. And while the front four of the Bears defense is injured, especially with Billings out, so they can't stop anybody on the run, this defense has regressed. This defense does allow points. Now they're really good in the red zone when there's only 15 yards in between them and a touchdown. The point is, teams have been able to do whatever they want on him. And somebody like DJ Moore, who's the utmost professional, you've never heard a bad word about DJ Moore, is out there showing us body language. The coach lost the locker room. And I don't necessarily always believe in that mantra, right? That fan thing that, oh, they're not playing hard for him. These guys play hard because if you don't in the NFL, you're going to die on that field. You're going to get trucked. You're going to get hurt. But they didn't believe in him. They didn't believe that was the guy that was going to take him to the future. They knew he was not going to be there next season when they were going to be there. So I guess, did Matt Eberflus, in a season where it's easy to always fire coaches, can you make an argument at any point that he was done wrong, that he was given enough? Is there any argument to be made that this day shouldn't have happened for him, Marver?
Well, if you're him, you think so. But I will point out you didn't mention any prospects for coaching named Matt. Eberflus was the fifth person named Matt who's been a head coach in the NFL. Patricia, Nagy, Rule, and LaFleur are the other ones. So, and I'm glad that John Gruden doesn't have a first name of Matt either. But either does it may. I mean, obviously, if I'm his friend or family, I wasn't given the rest of the season because we were going to end up, for God's sakes, we were going to go 9-8. We were going to turn it around. We've been so close, and from now on, we're going to make that extra step, and we're going to win every game because we prove we can play Green Bay and Minnesota and Detroit even. So that argument could be made, and obviously because of the media and the whole world of Twitter and Instagram and everything, that makes the whole thing seem so much bigger. Even the great geniuses on TV, who said that how could this happen? It's so horrible. It's but 32 seconds left. You couldn't do something better than this. So, I mean, I would have liked to have seen what they would have done in that situation. Third down with a 60-yard field goal attempt in front of you. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, any play is going to have to go to the sidelines if you use the timeout, and the other team would know that. So, and even that last play, I don't know. I guess he said he changed the play, and I don't know what it means when you're standing there for 10 seconds spinning your hand around by your ears.
Oh,
I mean,
so glad. Thank you, Marver.
Can't hear you. Or what does that mean?
Yes. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that a lot of people were wondering on social media, watching that play unfold, where you have Nan San Romo also kind of trying to talk us through it. We even had the radio call doing this. So what ended up happening is Thomas Brown to Caleb Williams, the communication wasn't getting to him. The play was being whether it was distorted or he couldn't hear it or something was going on. So you have Caleb doing this.
Yeah.
And finally, when the play does get in, where he understands what's going on and no timeout is being called, play still running, Caleb realizes that the play that they're going to call was meant for when they had 30 seconds left. So what do you do when you only have 7 seconds left in the game? Well, we got to go for the touchdown now. We have no choice.
Oh.
So Caleb calls a play meant for a big touchdown, and then that's how the game ends. So it's a mistake on a mistake on a mistake from all the levels.
Okay, well then, if it's a communication problem, can't you ask the referee to stop the clock because you can't hear the play?
Something, right? I mean, but where's your coaching staff? Anybody, any leader, and not even just Matt Eberflus, any leader out there. Why is nobody out there helping their team with a chance to beat a Super Bowl favorite? Marver?
Yeah, I don't know. That's my question. I'm glad you explained that, because I didn't know why he was spinning his hands around his ears for 10 seconds.
And it's just the visual is such a Bears visual this season. That is the problem. And Marver, I'm so glad you brought this up. I think it'd be one thing if it were one mistake, right? But the problem Matt Eberflus had, the biggest thing that sailed his fate was that this wasn't the first time this season. There were too many instances of mistake, little thing, big thing, a coaching that falled on him, even if it wasn't fully on him.
Right.
The optics matter.
Right.
If
Right.
this was the first time, right? He wouldn't have lost his job.
Yeah. He's not responsible for sealing the A gap. And he's not,
exactly.
He's not responsible for a ball bouncing off somebody's leg.
But the fact that it happens, right? It's your thing. It's the Titanic.
But you're the captain of the ship, like I said. So you fall on the sword, and this seems like the right thing to do. Although, I mean, hopefully he'll get another chance and he'll prove that he's can be successful.
Well, we will be covering this story as it develops even more, because we know that this is just the beginning stages of it. We're going to now see Thomas Brown audition for it. We're going to see if it brings him Jed Caldwell, Robert Saleh next season, if he's the new head coach. We'll see if Ben Johnson ends up really being the favorite for this position. There is a lot that this encompasses, because at the end of the day, it's the most important hire, arguably in Bears history, because it involves Caleb Williams. And in modern day football, when you're watching around the league right now, the X factor of the great teams, the good teams, and the bad teams is how good your quarterback is and how prepared your coaching staff has your team. And right now, the Bears have an opportunity to have all the stars align. And history will put a little skepticism towards it. But if you're ever going to get it right, you got to get it right now. Guys, this was a lot of fun, really interesting. We have a jam-packed edition. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're not done talking Bears, but it's going to be a little bit different of a conversation, because we're heading out to the suburbs. Coming up next, talking about the Chicago Bears. But Matt Eberflus has been let go as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. First time in over the 100-year legacy of this team, they have fired a head coach in this season. Thank you to Dan Marver. Thank you to Devin Tingle. We'll be right back here on WCPT 820 Heartland Signal. You're on the Sports Cubicle.